Hi, I'm Bob Cooley, and welcome to Resistance Flexibility. There are 4 parts of stretching, just like there are 4 parts of yourself. The physical part of yourself is like the positioning and movements in the stretching. The psychological part of yourself is knowing where to pay attention when you stretch. The emotional part of stretching is knowing how to breathe. And the energetic part of stretching is knowing how to resist.
Here we see assisted resistance flexibility training of the lateral hamstrings in progress. Our clinical study was designed to compare the results of resistance flexibility training to traditional stretching. We observed in a sample size of 20 participants a dramatic and significant range of motion increase as a result of resistance flexibility training and no change in response to traditional stretching.
Everyone knows what resistance strength training is. And Joanna's going to give us an example of that. We start with the bicep in the long position. We add a weight, and then she'll flex her elbow to shorten the bicep. But in resistance flexibility, the muscle starts in the short position. Joanna generates the resistance as somebody moves her to elongate or lengthen the muscle. In resistance flexibility, you don't just get an increase in flexibility, but also the capacity to shorten, speed of the shortening, and acceleration.
In self-resistance flexibility for the hamstrings, the person extends their lower leg while their hamstrings contract and resist. In assisted resistance flexibility for the hamstrings, another assister extends their lower leg while the hamstrings contract and resist.
As you can see, as John, Lauren, and Nick are stretching my left hamstring, I'm creating a tremendous amount of force. However, while that's happening, I'm feeling almost nothing in the left leg.
Notice that Nick on the right, it only takes one finger for him to overcome the strength of Lauren's tricep. But when he goes to resistance flexibility train her tricep, he can't flex her elbow. 2 people can't do it. It takes 3 people to overcome her resistive force. Resistance flexibility is a zero pain technique. There is little to no awareness of the magnitude of the resistive force generated by the person being assisted compared to sensation normally experienced in strength training. The resistive forces that the person generates during resistance flexibility, and especially during assisted resistance flexibility, could not be tolerated if administered from outside the body by deep tissue massage.
So in a bicep curl, I can lift about 30 pounds here. That's about my max. And that's strength training. But if I wanted to resistance flexibility train my bicep, I'd have to turn this up. So I'm going to turn up the resistance to about 50. And I'll use both hands to lift the weight. And I can barely lift that with both hands. But when I resist, it's no problem for me to slowly lower that. And that's stretching the fascia in my bicep. Do it again.
What is called in Western medicine agonist and antagonists is called balancing muscles in traditional Chinese medicine. When you resistance flexibility train your quads, the hamstrings are shortening. But the capacity of your hamstrings to shorten is dependent on their flexibility. So if you resistance flexibility train your hamstrings, then repeat the resistance flexibility training of your quads, there is a noticeable increase in your quad flexibility. In traditional stretching, it's just elongation of muscles. So to stretch John's hamstring, I just extend his lower leg while the hamstring muscle stretches. But in resistance flexibility, John will contract his hamstring, which will pull his heel towards him. While the muscle contracts, I'll extend the lower leg while he's resisting. The tensile strength of scar tissue far exceeds that of accumulated dense fascia. Many people are necessary to overcome the resistive forces of scar tissue.